Hey, this is Matthew Tringali, CEO and co-founder of BetterWho. And in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about DIYing a remote team member hire versus getting help for hiring a remote team member. And I want to start by talking about when you have that sales call with a landlord client and they maybe tried to DIY their own rental property in the past, or they're trying to decide if they want to hire a property management company like yours or to DIY this experience as a landlord. Look, at the end of the day, managing a property is not rocket science. With enough time, experience, energy, what have you, you can figure it out. But we know as property managers, we invest a lot in understanding all of the current laws, what the marketplace looks like. We're screening thousands of applicants every year. We know what to look for. We know what makes a good tenant versus not a good tenant. We know how to keep a good tenant happy and renewing the lease and all of these things, right? We know the importance, for example, of addressing maintenance quickly and the impact that will have, right? So at the end of the day, when you're talking about landlord clients, yeah, you could DIY it, but it's really easy to make a mistake and it's not free. It's very expensive. And so that's what I want to talk about in this video when it comes to making the wrong hire, right? So you could go about the business of DIYing a remote team member hire, and you might think to yourself, it doesn't cost me anything to just go out and give it a shot. What do I have to lose? That way I avoid the middleman cost of a staffing agency or the placement cost of a headhunter service, right? And so it's free. Why not give it a shot? See what happens. And if it doesn't work, then I'll circle back around. But I've got news. It's not free. It's actually making the wrong hire is one of the most expensive decisions you can make in your business. So I have some statistics for you here. 3 statistics I'm going to mention. First, when you make a wrong hire, just in terms of labor alone, typically 30% of the first year earnings is what you can expect around the cost of that wrong hire. So if you hired a remote team member at say $10 per hour, that's $6,000 for that part, right? Second statistic, 17% of a manager's time is spent on managing poor performers. So if you make the right hire, boom, you get all of that time back. And what's the most expensive labor you have, right, by the way? It's your time as a business owner or leadership upper management's time, right? So if you're taking that person's time, that's the most expensive labor that you have, and you have to spend 17% of that time managing a poor performer, that is incredibly expensive. Also, the third statistic I want to mention is that 46% failure rate is generally over fit and not skill, right? And making this wrong hire, a lot of times we hire based on skill, experience, expertise. We overvalue those things. And if we don't properly find the right fit, that's gonna have an incredibly high failure rate. And so if you don't understand how to find that right culture fit, then chances are it's really gonna not work out. So if you add all of these things together, that high failure rate with a poor fit, the massive amount of time spent managing poor performers, that 30% of first year earnings, and you apply it to a $10 an hour remote team member, the net effect on that is good. It's gonna cost you around $15,000 to $35,000 to hire the wrong person. So let that sink in, right? So you think it's free. You think, why not do this and give it a shot? And look, it's like gambling. You could go to Vegas, give it a shot. Who knows? I can't say you won't make money. Chances are you won't. We all know that. And that's how it works with making these hires. It's a big gamble because if you don't have that experience and expertise around this, then it is more of a crapshoot. And when you fail, again, that net effect, $15,000 to $35,000 versus what we do here at BetterWho. We've done over 1,000 placements at this point. We know exactly how to overcome all these problems. I want to touch briefly, by the way, on pay scale. Because if you've been hiring remote team members for a while or in the past, you may have this mindset around what it costs to hire a remote team member. And recently we went back and analyzed the over 1,000 placements that we've done. And we particularly focused on the last few hundred placements we've done over the last couple of years. And we noticed a very interesting trend. And that is, we were looking specifically at what correlations we could find behind how often we have to do a fulfillment, which means when a placement failed and we have to replace the placement, and pay. We've looked at other correlations as well, but specifically I want to talk about pay. And we found something very fascinating. We found that when we do a placement where the pay is less than $8 per hour, which, to be honest, is not often. We don't do very many placements less than $8 per hour. But we did find when we're doing those placements less than $8 per hour that actually they have a very high success rate. We don't have to replace them very often. And then we also found that when we do placements at $12 per hour or higher, they also had a very high success rate. And so we found this peak that happened between 8 and 12, and it particularly came to a peak at $10 per hour. That at $10 per hour, that was the highest rate where we were having to do fulfillments, where we were having to replace the placements that we did. So we're still doing more digging on this, but I have a theory of what's happening. My theory is that when you hire somebody around that $8 an hour mark, or even a little less, you know what you're getting, right? At that price point, you're typically hiring for admin, back office support, which is fine, right? That's what you're looking for there. But when you're trying to hire for somebody that is going to be more client-facing, making decisions, leadership type material within your business, think assistant property manager, maintenance coordinator, leasing specialist, things like this. My theory is that when we place at that around $10 per hour, which is a very common price point for us and for our clients, that I think one of two things is happening. Either they were not quite qualified, right? We over-assessed and they actually should be more like an $8 an hour person, and they really should fall back into that back office placement support. And so they didn't work, some of them didn't work out. Or they actually were overqualified. They should be getting paid a lot more. They actually should have been more like a $12 an hour hire. And the client maybe doesn't want to pay $12 per hour. And so they can't give them a raise or a promotion or challenge them enough, fast enough, and they end up looking for another job. Again, we're digging into this more, but this is one data point we're seeing right now. And so it's just some consideration as you're thinking about hiring a remote team member. That old way of thinking of hiring somebody for $4, $5, even $6 per hour is largely going away. And it's time to start broadening our mind around what does that look like to make a $12 to $15 per hour hire? What that skill level can really open things up within your business. So again, point of this video, two key things. Number one, it is not free to DIY a hire. As a matter of fact, it could end up being the most expensive thing you do to do that DIY hire when it doesn't work out. And number two, think very carefully about the price point you're looking for when you make a hire. Thanks for watching this video. Let us know what other videos you'd like to see, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.